So welcome everyone. My name is David Firth and I'm the president and CEO for DataBlend. DataBlend is an iPaaS or integration software company. And as you all know, the topic of this briefing it's demystifying integration. And even though you're likely listening to this as a recording, I'd like to start by asking you to think about the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the words integration. I'm very fortunate that I get to talk to people every day about trying to tackle their integration challenges. And there's no question that integration does not have the best reputation. I suspect that when I asked you to think about my question, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you consider integration? Things like it's hard, it's expensive, it takes a lot of time, certainly came to mind. And until about 18 months ago, which is coincidentally when I joined DataBlend, I certainly did not think any differently. I was, prior to that, a reseller of an accounting software package from Sage Intacct, and they had a thriving marketplace of applications that were supposedly easy to integrate. But when integration came up, it was definitely a topic that, in general, right, I tended to try to avoid, to sort of keep out of, if you will, the sales process, and to keep that sales sort of motion and that velocity high. And it's interesting, right? Because SaaS providers, software publishers are certainly trying to sort of change the reputation. They're positioning that integration is easy, and they sort of talk a lot about robust and open APIs. They encourage other software, complementary software products to participate kind of on their marketplace to complement their solution. And very often, if it's a standard marketplace offering from an ERP or an accounting software provider, there's no added cost for what I'll describe as sort of these out-of-the-box connections, right? Kind of the standard integrations, if you will. So what's the issue here? How many of you have encountered a situation where there's a solution that's available on a marketplace that doesn't meet all the requirements? If you think about, for example, a CRM system like Salesforce, what happens if your client has created custom objects in Salesforce? How do you deal with the integration then? Or if you're integrating with a payroll solution like ADP, and they want to bring statistical accounts like the number of employees, so that they can do some operational reporting, for example, revenue per employee, and they want to bring that in to the ERP, or if you want to push budget information from a CPM solution like Adaptive back into the general ledger, right? Very often, the CPM providers sort of offer these one-way integrations, kind of going back to that term I used earlier, out of the box. And this list is a lot longer, frankly, than I ever imagined in terms of what those other use cases potentially could be. So again, not all of the out-of-the-box integrations meet the requirements that your clients might have. And how many of you have worked with a client or a customer that wanted to integrate with an application that did not have a public API, or more likely was just not cloud-based, right? That certainly happens quite often, surprisingly today, but it is certainly something that we see a lot of. Maybe an operations application that was developed internally. Or for example, we currently work with a large software company that has 2 homegrown e-commerce platforms. And then lastly, how many of you have access internally to the technical resources that you might need that can build out custom integrations? And if you do, what does a typical implementation cost, and what percentage of your customers are actually willing to pay for those custom integrations? So again, all sorts of reasons why potentially integration is a topic that you may want to avoid. So what is this integration stuff really all about? When you break it down, it's not all that complicated. Given that I would imagine that everyone who's listening has done some form of integration manually using Excel, all the steps that I'm about to sort of walk you through are going to sound pretty familiar. In fact, all iPaaS applications are really doing is taking what you've done manually and automating them. It all starts with establishing credentials, just like logging in. Once credentials have been established, the next step is collecting the data you need from any source. What kind of data? Maybe it's actuals from your general ledger to update your budgeting and forecasting applications. Or maybe it's orders from your CRM that in turn create a sales order or even a purchase order in your ERP. One of the limits of many out-of-the-box integrations is that they do not have access to all the data that you might want to collect. Once the data is collected, it's almost always the data almost always needs to be transformed, right? All that stuff that you've done in Excel, mapping a field, flipping signs, concatenating, pivoting, joining. This tends to be an extremely time-consuming and error-prone process, as you know, and it's really where the magic happens in iPaaS applications like DataBlend. Once the data is transformed, the next step is sending to the target application. Just like with collecting data, you need to establish the credentials to the target. And as I describe it, right, it sounds too simple. You might ask if it were that simple, right? And if it were, I would be including it, right, way more when you're out selling. The issue isn't that it's not that simple. The issue really is that too many people and companies make it seem complicated. A black box, if you will, and only offer to do it at prohibitively high costs. This is certainly why I tended to avoid the topic when I was reselling the software. The options that I had were always too costly, too time consuming, going back to the issues that we talked about earlier in the discussion. And the right iPaaS publisher changes everything, right? All of the coding, all the scripting that needs to get done for these custom integrations that you've probably come across in the past essentially go away. The right iPaaS solution is going to allow you to be able to work in any type of environment, whether it's cloud-based software applications, whether it's older on-prem and legacy applications, or if you don't have access to those environments, even being able to collect information via a flat file by dropping that file onto what's called an SFTP site. And the beauty of all of this is that all of a sudden now, if you go this route, you have a single platform that allows you, right, as the provider, to create for your clients, your customers, manage and support all the different integrations that they want from a common tool. And the beauty of it is that in the proper iPaaS model, the one that sort of DataBlend subscribes to, is that you're also not going to have to pay to build and enhance new connections, because as a SaaS service, DataBlend, as an example, every month is adding new connections, new integrations, and enhancing the old ones. So the entire community of users, right, is benefiting from that process. I sure wish I knew about iPaaS when I was reselling software, because it would have been game-changing, not only for me as the provider, but for our clients, a much better experience for them. So I want to just sort of, again, pause and sort of ask you to sort of consider a couple of things. One is, does your company have a comprehensive strategy on how they approach integration for each project and client that includes iPaaS, right? Or sort of do you fit in the category of, your company recommends custom or point integrations to meet requirements for your projects? Or the third category might be, we avoid the topic altogether. And I ask it because, we tend to sort of track these kinds of things. And, what we typically hear, right, is a very, very small percentage of companies have a comprehensive strategy around this, and a much larger percentage, right, tend to sort of recommend these custom and point integrations to meet the requirements of their project. The time has come for you all to be having a pretty comprehensive strategy about how you approach integration for your clients. And it should be a conversation that you're having right up front. With the proliferation of best-in-class software, right, there are these data flows, these workflows that need to be supported. The average accounting and finance team today is probably using anywhere from 6 to 10, maybe even 12 different applications. How that data is moving across all of those things and really up to date is critical to them. And if you're avoiding that topic, you're not really serving their best interest or yours. So the net is this is an incredible opportunity, for you to generate some revenue, but it's also an incredible opportunity for you to bring significant additional value. We like to say at DataBlend that every accounting and finance team's technology stack today should include iPaaS. For all the reasons that I've mentioned so far. And why is it so important, right? To your clients, everybody's talking about digital transformations, right? You can't get away, from reading a periodical in this space where people aren't talking about some form of digital transformation and automation. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there's so many applications that the folks that we serve, that you serve, are relying on that without integration, they're just not going to get the real value and the benefit that you're suggesting they will. Most integrations available on the marketplaces of the ERP providers that you are reselling, all run through the ERP. So what do I mean by that? It's very much a hub and spoke model. So you think about some of the examples that I've given today. It's payroll information coming into the ERP. It's sales information from your CRM coming into the ERP or from an e-commerce platform. But the reality is that not all integrations flow through the ERP provider. And so you might want to send information about your sales forecast into your budget and planning system. And so, again, going back to that idea of having a platform that allows you to sort of manage these connections. And if you think about iPaaS being in the middle and facilitating not just point-to-point connections, but kind of many-to-many connections, it's a pretty powerful concept that you're going to be able to bring to your clients and your customers. And then the other thing that to sort of keep in mind here, right, is that the default for most of the folks that we're talking to is still Excel, right? People pride themselves in accounting and finance of being sort of these Excel jockeys and sort of have coming up with these amazing ways to do these transformations. But the reality is it's incredibly time consuming for them and it's error prone. It's just something that is so critically important to replace, giving those same team members the opportunity to be able to really bring more value in other places, and frankly, not have the stress of trying to get all of this stuff done last minute through this manual process. So when you think about iPaaS, when you think about DataBlend in particular, I'd like you to sort of think about it from the perspective that you're really helping empower your clients and your customers to be able to address a technical challenge that very often doesn't actually get handled very well because the community that we sell into from a technology perspective tends to be very underserved, right? And if we can give them the tools to be able to bring this kind of automation without having to go to their IT department or without having to go to a third party to build these custom connections, they're going to be in a much better position to deliver on the kinds of things that they're hoping to deliver with all this other technology that they've invested so heavily in. And I want to leave you kind of with this last set of quotes from some partners of ours who have really seen some pretty significant benefit from including iPaaS in their portfolio. And today, frankly, very few accounting software resellers are doing that, right? They're doing more of what I described earlier, right? With just sort of working off of what's existing in the marketplace, or requiring it when those requirements aren't met, to do some custom integration of some kind. You know, I have another story just from an email today that came in from a partner that basically said that if it weren't for DataBlend, if it weren't for us to be able to offer the ability to provide the kind of integration that I've described to you, our deal would have gone another way. Integration is going to become commonplace. iPaaS is going to become commonplace in the very near future. And so if you don't embrace it and start including it as part of your portfolio, it's going to be a really significant missed opportunity. I hope that I've piqued your sort of curiosity around the topic, you know, provided you with some good, useful information, and that it will encourage you to reach out to the folks at DataBlend, myself, to continue this dialogue and learn maybe how you could add DataBlend to your offering. Thank you very much.